Welcome to our Stretching for Yoga series, and this time we're moving up the body and we're looking at shoulders in flexion and external rotation. It's a sort of a mixture of things going on there. And many postures involve us needing to be able to do that. Anytime that we raise our arms above our heads, if we feel that our arms are turning out, that we can't bring our hands together without our elbows pointing out, or if we feel that in down dog, our shoulders are rising up, if we feel in our back bends, in our Urdhva Dhanurasana, that our elbows go out. All those are incorporated in that sort of flexion and external rotation sort of movements, yeah? So how can you know by now that I like a little sort of test posture that tells us whether we're restricted in this, that, and the other. So this is our little exercise for showing whether we're restricted in external rotation in the shoulders or not. And it's basically just to keep your elbows close by your sides and then take your arms out and try and lay if you're up against the wall, try and lay the forearms, yeah, on the wall, yeah? And if you can, then you're already pretty open in external rotation in the shoulders, so you probably don't need to do these exercises. If you can't, like me, and you get stuck about here, then they will really help, yeah? And then you'll find that any postures, even things like Mayurasana, forearm balance, these sorts of things it will make life a lot easier for you, okay? So what we're going to think about is how we can access the shoulder in these sorts of movements. And really, it involves quite often using a strap and some sort of blocks, yeah? Because they're going to actually, if it's a wooden block, give us some weight, and if it's a rubber block or what is this, compressed foam, then it's going to give us either something to bend over or something to actually space us. So it's quite useful to have some props, yeah? So the first one I'm going to show you actually doesn't involve these things and really is opening us more into flexion. And of course, we've said before that, movements around the certain joints will be very direction dependent. So it might be that you're restricted in one, but you're perfectly fine in the other. Or you can take your arm behind, okay, but you can't do this one, you can't do that one. So very direction specific. So the first one is looking more at the flexion side of things and not so much the external rotation because we're not using the blocks and straps, yeah? So what you can do is you're just going to come into this position with your pelvis over your knees, and then you're just going to reach out in front of you. Now, it's good if you can try and create some grip with your forearm on the mat so that you actually stop your elbows from sliding out. And then we're just going to basically take our chest towards the floor. Now, depending on how bendy your back is, depending whether you look like a ski slope or whether you look a little bit straight. But what we want to be making sure is that we don't, if I am bendy in the back, that I'm still working in the shoulders, yeah? So don't just take it all in the back. Make sure that you're actually trying to work in this area if this is where your restriction is, yeah? So from this position out the front, I'm trying not to let my elbows go out, and then I'm taking my chest towards the floor. And then you just stay there, yeah? Just hang out. So this is one of those postures that you just sort of stay for 10, 15, 20 breaths, and then you could repeat it a few times. So that one is sort of quite nice and easy, okay? So the next one we're going to get into is now we're going to start thinking about using blocks, okay? And so what you need to be able to do, first of all, is you want to get a strap and space it so that when you put your arms through, they stay at roughly shoulder height. You don't want it too narrow so that your hands are sort of coming towards the middle, and you don't want it too wide because then you've got too much space, okay? So, and you're going to need some sort of spacer, some sort of block, and that you're going to then put between your hands, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to come into a dolphin posture. But this is just going to make sure that we keep our hands spaced nicely. You could use like a really thick book, you know, as long as it's sort of relatively rigid or some sort of, we've actually made these sorts of blocks before out of porridge boxes and just filled them up with milk cartons, and the same with these sorts of things. Although this is turning into an arts and crafts video, but you can make this sort of block out of a 1 litre milk carton, a wooden, a paper one, with fill it up with water or sand or that sort of thing, if you have to improvise. When we're traveling, we do that sort of stuff. What we want to do is we want to put this just above our elbows, so it's not uncomfortable on our elbows. We want to place this block down in the center of our mat, spread our fingers, and you're creating that sort of shape with the block sort of sitting in here, okay? And then from there, we're just going to then push down into our down dog, yeah, and just sort of hold it there. And take our chest towards the wall. This is not my favorite because your head gets interfered with by the strap, but it's sort of okay. Yeah? And then you would sort of hold that position for a while. To start with, depending on how open you are, it really is, quite hard to hold that position. And it's a good one because you don't need too much stuff, but it's also an awkward one to hold for very long, unless you've got quite good, the longer your hamstrings, the easier it will be for you, because then you're not playing with your shoulders and your hip flexion as well. So the next one we're going to do uses the same sort of principle, but we're going to use our ledge to actually put our elbows on top of. And this makes it a lot more accessible because of the fact you don't have to worry, as I say, about the bottom half of you. So we'll slide this little video in here. Okay, so here we are set up for our shoulder opener using the wall. So this is, our ledge. This is our makeshift ledge, but better you have something a little bit more sturdy, okay? So we want our block, okay, roughly 12 inches long, and we want our strap set up so that when we put our arms through it, that they are basically keeps our elbows roughly the same width as our shoulders, okay? So we want to have our strap about just above the elbow, okay? And then we're going to place our elbows onto the wall. Again, even if it's on a ledge, you're going to probably want a folded up towel or something on the ledge to make it a little bit more comfy on the elbows, okay? And then I'm putting my elbows in between these nasty ridges on the chair, so I don't think I'll be staying there very long. And you basically just create an L shape with your body. If you want to see how I'm holding the block, it's like that. It's much better than like this. But you can play with the two. Like this, you might land up dropping the block and having to come out if you're not very used to it. So start with holding the block like this. Once you get used to it, then turn the block like that, okay? So I'm going to be here. I've got the block. And then I take my chest towards the floor, okay? And the block is keeping me spaced with my hands, and the strap is keeping my elbows spaced. And then I'm just taking my chest down, trying to keep my spine long, and that's all there is to it. Nice and simple, but really quite effective. And then when you're ready, you've done your 25 breaths, or whatever many you want to do, you can come out. Of course, you can use the same apparatus, you can use it on the wall. Yeah, if I could find a wall, and I can just place my hands on the wall, with block on the wall, and then I can do the same sort of thing, create that L shape. The only thing is, with a ledge, it just stops your elbows dropping down, so it's a little bit more secure. But if you haven't got a ledge, or a right sort of height ledge, then just use the wall. Make do with whatever you've got. If you've only got something down here, then you can do the same thing kneeling. Then you're just going to kneel down and just take your body out and rest through. So yes, you don't have to use particular equipment. You can just make up anything you've got. You can use, a dressing gown cord, or I've used before now a karate belt, or anything to create something the right width. And the same with this. You can just use something that spaces you. It might be a bundle of books. It might be a cornflake box, or whatever. Just chop to the right width, just so you've got something to work with. Okay. So this was a nice little exercise using our ledge. And then the third one that we're going to show you now is back on the floor using a little bit more of a dynamic effort. We're using a wooden block to bend over and a slightly different width on the strap. Okay, so that was our shoulder opener with our ledge. And you can actually also bring in our little PNF exercise into that if we choose to do so, by pressing down with your elbows into the ledge and then relaxing and then going a little bit deeper after your 5-6 breaths, okay? So a lot of these exercises you can bring in a little bit of PNF. For those of you that missed the other videos, what we're meaning there is you're contracting the muscle that you're then going to relax afterwards, okay? So you're a little bit effort going in the opposite direction to the direction that you want to stretch into, okay? So most of the exercises can be used in this way, modified a little bit. Just remember, only 20 to 30% effort. Okay, so the next one is more of, it's definitely a shoulder opener, but it's also an upper back opener, which can also be important, of course, in our full body back bends. We need to be able to access the front of the body, but depending on how we do it, depends on which sort of little area we're going to hit. So once you're in it, once I show you and I'm in it, I'll show you the cues that you need to be careful of. So it's quite important, so you need to watch the setup for this one quite carefully as to where we place things. So we're going to do it, let's do it this way round. So you want some sort of foam block. You can use a wooden block, but you can imagine it's not very nice with this bending over it. You've got to put some sort of towel on it, and then even then that might not be so comfy. So it's nice if you can get one of these really hard blocks to actually bend over, and if it's a wider one, all the better, okay? So you're going to have that in the center of your mat, and it's going to be square. And then we also want some sort of weighted block. So this is a wooden block, and this is going to actually pull us a little bit deeper into the stretch. And we want to place that directly behind the other one, but with about a foot space. Or I don't even know what that is in centimeters, I'm afraid. Okay, and then with our strap, what we want is a little bit wider than the strap width that we had to do our one against the wall or our Dolphin. We need it a little bit longer, okay? So we're just going to adjust our strap another 10 centimeters. Let's go for that. Yeah, so there it's just a little bit wider because this is now actually going to go behind my head, okay? So the going into this and the coming out of it is a sequence, okay? And it's a very important sequence to do it in this specific order so that you don't actually come out of it cack-handed and hurt yourself, okay? So we are going to place ourselves so that when we take hold of the block, so this is the first thing, we're going to take hold of the block so as it doesn't move, and then we're going to try and place ourselves so that the block is going to be pressing between my shoulder blades, between the bottom, but not up the top. So the bottom of my shoulder blades, okay? So that's about there, okay? So we don't want the block to be bending. If the block is bending, then it's not really strong enough for the job. This block is a little bit touch and go. Okay, so now I've got the block in place, I need to get the strap in place. And so I loop my arms through, and now still keeping my nice secure place on the block, I take the strap behind my head, and it wants to be on the back of my head, not down here on my neck. Not down here, but on the back of my head. So we take it behind my head, okay? And then I reach back and take the block, okay? And now I'm going to turn the block sideways so that now I can hold it and keep my elbows in, all right? And now I'm going to take the block towards the floor. So now we've got a nice weight pulling me into this position. But try as much, hopefully we've got the strap in such a way that my elbows can't go out. But if it's a little bit loose, this is a little bit on the loose side actually. So you need to actually try and keep your elbows in, all right? And then just let the weight drag you down. Now, if I just let my rib cage come up, you see how I can go down to the floor? Yeah, so I've curved over the block, but I basically let go of my rib cage, which isn't really going to help my shoulders very much. So what I want to be doing is pulling down on my bottom ribs towards my pelvis, and that's going to secure that part of me, and then I can bend over from there. So I'm now working more into the shoulders, which is what this little video is about, plus more into the upper back. Yeah. So if you find it's too easy, you've probably just curved over the block too much. Okay. And you probably want to hold that like 20 breaths, something like that to start with, and see how that feels. Okay. So now coming out is again just as important. So first of all, we put the block down. Okay. Then we take the strap off. Yeah. And then we come up. Yeah? So you want to do it in that sequence. You don't want to try and come up while your arms are still in the strap, because then you're levering your body and all a bit precarious. This thing can fall sideways and then, oh, I've tightened something and it hasn't done you any good at all. So this is a really good opener. It just needs to be done very strictly and very methodically. Don't allow this block to come too far down your back, okay? You want it, as I say, round about we could call this the leading edge of the block. You want the leading edge of the block roughly in line with the bottom of your shoulder blades, yeah? And in the center of your body as well, okay? So that's 3 really good exercises for working on this flexion combined with external rotation. You might think, well, there's not much external rotation there. Well, there is, because we have to do this. Here's our external rotation to get our elbows to come in. And then those same muscles get stretched when you then take it into flexion, which is the same reason that when left unattended and that restriction then, say we're doing a back bend, the elbows can start coming out as we start pressing into it. It's that same sort of movement that we need to sort of restrict. So it's really, these exercises are really quite effective at creating that sort of range of movement we need for those sorts of postures, okay? I'll give you one now that just works solely on the external rotation of the shoulder, which is, it's more of a passive exercise. And because it's very hard to just work on that movement alone. And so what you need is something, these are going to be too light, but if you could have like a little eye bag, yeah, you know that you put when you're doing your Shavasana sometimes, a little scented seed bag, just for a little bit of weight, or you can have like a small bottle of water, that sort of size water, not too much weight. And what you're going to do is you're going to lie in, and I'll just do one side because I haven't got much room, okay? So I'm basically recreating that position that I did when I was sitting up against the wall, when I'm taking my arms out to the side. But now what I'm doing is I'm adding in a little bit of something to help with gravity, yeah? And so I keep my elbow close by my side. This arm would be doing exactly the same. It's just I'm up against the wall. And then we have something with a little bit of weight on our hand that allows it to just take it gradually towards the floor. So the main thing is keep the elbow by the side and have a 90-degree angle between the upper arm and the lower arm, and then also don't let your wrist just drop towards the floor, because what we're trying to do is get this whole part of the arm towards the floor. And what will happen is that over time the weight will just take it towards the ground. So it's more of a passive exercise, but actually is quite nice and isolating if you have a particular restriction in that area, okay? So, hope you like those. That's a little bit of exercises working on increasing your external rotation and your flexion at the shoulder. And so just do those regularly, and you'll find that when you come to do your postures that involve those movements, it will make it a little bit easier for you. Good. Hope you enjoyed that, and see you soon.